Welcome to Counterpoint. I'm Tanya Granick-Allen. We have a current events panel with us today, but we're doing a little change. Rather than having a panel, I'm actually going to be one of the panelists today. I'm going to be host and panelist. And of course, this is a regular feature here on our show. And we're going to cover many, many topics, which you probably have seen in the news headlines lately. We're going to discuss the overturn of Roe v. Wade in the U.S. and what that could mean for Canadians. We'll tackle the recent RCMP Commissioner Brenda Lucki scandal and talk about that. And we'll cover C-11 and how it recently passed the House of Commons and how, if it passes the Senate, this could impact you. And we'll also discuss Winnipeg's renaming of Canada Day to New Day. Lots to chat about indeed, and returning now to help me unpack it all is David Clement, North American Affairs Manager for the Consumer Choice Center, and of course, a regular contributor here on Counterpoint. And I should add, also an occasional guest host. So welcome, David. It's good to see you, and your title keeps kind of growing here as I introduce you.
Thank you very much. Appreciate it.
So lots to chat about. Obviously, recently, Roe v. Wade was overturned. That, as much as it was not surprising, because of course there was the leaked court decision in early May, so folks in America sort of had the heads up. Actually, globally, people kind of knew what to expect, but it still was surprising. It wasn't surprising, but it was still shocking, and I think it sent a shockwave through the U.S. Whether you fell on the pro-life or the pro-abortion side of the argument, it didn't really matter.
Yeah, I mean, it was shocking in the United States. It sent shockwaves throughout the international community, where you had Canadian politicians, European politicians, mostly expressing their concern because, of course, the overturn of Roe v. Wade will defer abortion access to the states, and that will really vary depending on the state. There are states, for example, like Texas, who want to put limitations as early as 10 weeks. And then there's a huge spectrum of potential laws between then and the third trimester. And so what we're seeing now is, I think, the beginning of a very prominent debate in the United States, which will continue to spill over into Canadian politics, as it often does, and as in European politics as well.
And, you know, you brought up a good point that this sort of decentralizes the abortion issue. So previously, it was kind of codified federally, and now that was overturned. There's no right to an abortion federally in the U.S. So states in their own jurisdiction, and in America, they tend to enjoy a more decentralized kind of form of government than we have sort of in recent years. We tend to be more federally focused. They tend to be more state-centric. So now the states get to decide. And you know, as we know, there have been many attempts or successful attempts to bring in restrictions to abortion access, or, you know, fetal pain bills or informed consent legislation that sort of was seen as a chipping away of abortion access or abortion rights in America. Well, there is no more abortion. There is no right to abortion in America anymore. So now the states will decide. What do you think we can expect not state to state, but in general from American states? Do you think some will just pass legislation immediately allowing what they had previously enjoyed?
I think it depends. I think in the South, you'll probably see an emergence of very restrictive bills, bills that were attempted while Roe v. Wade was upheld, that were struck down. I use Texas as the example, which is a particularly intrusive restriction. You'll probably see some traditionally blue states seek to codify legislation that is more liberal and have more access. So you'll really see a disparity on a state-by-state basis, not entirely divided red and blue, but very much so red and blue in terms of what the laws are and where women will have access to these services and at what point in pregnancy, which is really I think the biggest issue at stake is at what point does an abortion become no longer an option for somebody wanting to terminate a pregnancy? Or
at what point does the fetus, I guess, garner human rights? At what point do they receive human rights, and then that no longer is allowable? You mentioned, or just one thing to point out is a lot of these states that had previously, prior to the Roe v. Wade overturn, had passed legislation restricting access or restricting timing of abortion, those pieces of legislation were not enforceable, really, because federally there was this universal right to abortion. We're going to talk a little bit more about this and its impacts to Canada in just a few moments.